Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hey, it's Jackie Cation. Welcome to the Dork Forest. You know the websites, JackieCation.com, DorkForest.com, TheDorkForest.com, FamilyPetAncestry.com. You're probably already there. Let's do the credits. Mike Rickberg composed and sang that song with his wife Sarah that you just heard. He's going to sing his version of the Mexican Hat Dance at the end of the program. Patrick Brady is going to fix this audio, and Vilmos works on JackieCation.com, the website. There are many ways to support the show. The Amazon link is one. You can use an Amazon link from JackieCation.com or DorkForest.com to go to Amazon. You order like normal, and it supports the show. There is a straight-up donation button, PayPal or Venmo, to this email address that is mine, Jackie@JackieCation.com, where you can just donate to the show if you like the show a lot. I think PayPal has figured out a way to do a monthly. If you want to go monthly, please do. Other ways to support the show if you want to is you can buy merch. There's Dork Forest t-shirts, and all the shirts are union made here in America, so they run a little big. Union Bayside, so if you want to look up their size chart. And then the other merch is my stand-up merch. On JackieCation.com, you can watch me do stand-up, you can look at my schedule, and the stand-up merch, a couple of different t-shirts, couple of different enamel pins, and all my CDs and my DVD. If you want to live stream my DVD, it's over there at comedyfilmnerds.com. They have a live streaming capability, or you can get a hard copy of the DVD on my website. Oh, there are premium episodes at Bandcamp. TheDorkForest.bandcamp.com has probably 10 episodes that were done live. They cost me a couple of bucks to make, so I charge you a couple of bucks. If you've run out of regular episodes, go over to TheDorkForest.bandcamp.com and get some more. Other than that, I say this. Let's get into the show. Hey, it's beginning. My name's Jackie Cation. Jeff Baldinger.
Hello.
I forgot to ask all the other questions that I usually ask, but here we are in my living room we just had a stone fruit. Did you know it's stone fruit season?
I did not know that it was the stone fruit season. I thought you were going to ask me, do I know what a stone fruit is? And I'd be like, I do know what stone fruit is. Yes.
I never heard it referred to as stone fruit. I've decided I want to be classy and start calling it stone fruit.
Well, you got the peach.
Right.
You got the avocado.
Oh, is that a fruit?
Isn't it? I believe so.
Well, it's got a stone in it.
Because the seed is on the inside.
Right. But there's the nectarine. I think nectarine, plum,
right,
peach. That's what I usually think. Maybe
I believe those are all accurate, but I would think that an avocado is a part of the stone fruit family simply because the seed in the middle is more of a stone, right?
Except for that, is it a fruit?
I think it is. What would it
digress.
What would it be if it wasn't a fruit?
A vegetable?
Well, vegetables are just like a culinary term.
I just got school. What? Is it really?
Yeah. That's like one of those little known facts that pretentious people are like, actually, a vegetable is just a culinary term. It's like,
Jeff Baldinger is here, you guys.
Hey,
and he
everybody.
knows things. He knows things. And stand-up comic Jeff Baldinger. I forgot to get
Baldinger.
Baldinger. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is Gail Carriger was on the show, and I pronounced it Gail Carriger the whole time. So it's Baldinger.
Because there is a Brian Baldinger.
Oh, yeah. I know that guy.
And he has a brother named Jeffrey Baldinger, but I am Jeffrey Baldinger.
And I'm going to go with Jeffrey Baldinger and stop calling you Jeff like a maniac.
It's okay.
It's, what am I, your mom? Jeff, clean up your room.
Jeff.
Yeah. Some people, they can't take the long version because it reminds them of their mom. Yeah. Probably you, the short version.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, because I always introduce, like, I've never minded people calling me Jeff.
Okay.
But I always introduce myself as my full name.
Yeah.
Just Jeffrey Baldinger. Hey, I'm Jeffrey Baldinger. What always makes me laugh, though, is when I introduce myself as, hey, I'm Jeffrey Baldinger. It's like, hey, Jeff, what's going on? Are you going to nickname me right after you just met me?
We are so
close. You just met me? Probably somebody who calls somebody boss who doesn't work for them. It's like, what up? No.
Who doesn't work for them? That's why you call somebody a boss.
Yeah.
You know that I've never had a job where I said, hey, boss, just want to interrupt you. Hey, chief.
Yeah.
And
hey, chief, I'm not a part of your tribe. No. Come on.
I understand why Jonah Jameson doesn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
It's like, stop calling me chief.
Mm-mm.
It's, yeah.
Triple J.
Oh, yeah. That's it. Okay. So what is your Twitter handle? Twitter, Instagram, all of that
This
stuff.
is going to be funny because my Twitter handle is @JeffBaldinger. Twitter said Jeffrey Baldinger was too long, so I had to have @Jeff Baldinger.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Jeff Baldinger.
Twitter, IG, @Jeff Baldinger.
And
Website is jeffreybaldinger.net.
.net.
Yeah.
All right. That's because Jeffrey Baldinger, too popular.
.com was
I'm
taken
sure
already.
taken as well.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where that goes. And you know what? You gave me a great list of things that you'd like to dork out about.
Yeah.
Let's start out with the one that I know the least about.
Okay.
The musical band The Beatles.
Ah, the Beatles. They're an underground band. They're
You may
really
not have heard of them.
They're coming up the pop
I
charts.
own the number 1 album.
Well, so there you go.
Right?
You
All
got-
their number 1 hits?
Yeah. Which is a great.
That's a great album.
It's a great album. It's a great
Right?
album. A re-release after they were,
All dead.
most of them were dead.
No, they're all dead now.
Most
No,
of them
I'm
are
kidding.
dead. Well,
I'm kidding.
Paul, if you have to, it's like the we can get into this, but the Paul is dead rumors or whatever, where back in '67 the big rumor was Paul McCartney died and they replaced him with a lookalike.
A look-alike.
Yeah, that was the whole thing where it was like, because on the Abbey Road
Wow.
cover, he doesn't have his shoes on, his eyes are closed, and the license plate says 28 if, and it was like, he'd be 28 if he was alive, sort of like all those conspiracy.
A lot of pot going on. Don't try the brown acid, you guys. Holy smokes.
And my whole philosophy on that thing is, if that is true, if Paul McCartney did die in '67 and they replaced him with some lookalike, it's like they hit the jackpot because holy shit, that guy's talented. He made Sgt. Pepper, he did Wings, he did everything at all of Paul McCartney's solo career is this replacement Paul McCartney.
Right. So
wow.
in other words, it could be any of us.
Yeah.
It could have been any of us. It's just fine.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. And that's why John didn't get along with him.
Right. No,
Because
there's the
he
whole
was just-
he got along with the original Paul McCartney, but this
Right.
other guy is like, stealing my thunder.
That's where it all
Stealing my
came
thunder,
from. Are there people who still believe that?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God! I thought you were gonna. Oh no! Don't be
Yeah,
ridiculous.
no, it's
I'm sorry.
The Paul is dead conspiracy threads are
On
just-
Reddit?
Oh my God,
They're real.
they're very real. But that's just people love conspiracy theories. People love all that stuff. But
now we have the internet, so they can really live it up.
yeah. But I put an old picture, like a young picture of Paul,
Right?
through that Oldify app.
Oh yeah.
And he looks like the Paul now, so I feel like that research is
That's
legitimate.
complete.
That's a complete.
The Oldify app.
I feel like that is good enough.
We've debunked that. Next
so
up.
I've debunked
9/11.
officially. Yeah. So see the beams.
Exactly. So the crazy thing is, okay, so the Beatles. Here's what I know about the Beatles.
Okay.
They started in Germany. No, they didn't. They started in England. They went to Germany. They did 100 shows a day to become really good, and then they came back to England, and then they were better, and then they came over here and they hired people to scream at them, and then because Elvis had hired people to scream at him because of the Colonel, and then people just screamed at them.
Yeah.
And then everyone lost their mind. And then they did a lot of drugs. I do like the commitment of conspiracy theories pre-internet.
Oh yeah.
Just imagine, you're got a Xerox machine.
The
you gotta churn them out.
The idea of putting forth that amount of effort to anything.
Yeah. That's a dorkdom.
Like
Yeah.
protesting. Just before the internet, before hashtags, before
Right.
making the signs.
Right.
It's insane the
That's
amount of effort that you have to put in.
Movable type? What's happening?
I mean, my
It's-
God, just
Right.
the amount of effort to push up a sign and then pull it back down and then push it back up and just scream slogans.
Paul is dead. Long live Paul.
Yeah, and Ringo never, Pete Best forever, all that stuff.
Oh,
And,
right.
back in the day when but Pete Best, the original drummer.
The original drummer, was he the drummer in when they went to Germany?
Initially, yeah,
Okay.
because Ringo was a part of Rory, Storm, and the Hurricanes. He was part of
great
that
name.
big band. He was a big band drummer, and he was the most professional. Like he's the oldest Beatle.
Oh, okay.
The oldest. An old trivia question back in the day was, who is the oldest, youngest Beatle?
Oh,
It was
okay.
Ringo, because he's the oldest, age-wise, but youngest member, sort of thing. But he would sit in with the Beatles every so often when Pete wouldn't be able to go to Hamburg and stuff like that. And they just had a better vibe together, and he was a better drummer. And people shit on Ringo a lot, but he was...
you think Ringo better drummer than Pete Best?
100%.
Even though Pete Best was the big band guy? Or was
No. Ringo was the big band guy.
Oh, okay.
Pete Best was more... thumper, he's like wipeout sort of, like all that stuff.
Wait a minute.
They had to re-record all that stuff.
Is older than John?
Yeah.
And Paul?
Yeah.
And isn't he still alive?
Paul and Ringo are both still alive, yeah.
Well, look at Ringo.
I know.
Making it. He's outlasting everybody.
He's going to be the last Beatle alive because the world is ironic.
Right, because that's what God's like.
Yep.
God's a huge fan of numerology.
He's a big fan of satire, and just he loves the British humor.
He yucks it up. And so, how old is Ringo at this juncture? Do we know, or Paul?
I believe Ringo was born early 1940s.
Okay.
John was born just October 9th, 1940.
Oh, really?
So he would have been. No math.
Right. So he'd be older.
Yeah, he'd be older, but Ringo's probably 70 some odd.
Do we know when Paul was born?
Not off the top of my head. No.
All right.
I'm not familiar. While I know everything about the Beatles, the band history and stuff like that, I'm not familiar with the minutia of the dates of when they died.
No, you're not. You're not sitting on their birth certificate.
Right, exactly.
Fair enough.
I did last summer get to visit all their birth homes, though. I went to Liverpool.
Really?
I did comedy in Liverpool, which amazing. If you ever get a chance, Hot Water Comedy Club, one of the best clubs that I've performed in.
Allow me to make a note because I will. I'll do it.
It is amazing. They got 2 clubs there. Booker is awesome. He loves and cares about comedy, and the crowds there were fantastic. 4 shows, they were all sold out, and it was just
that's amazing.
Fantastic. And Liverpool was a treat for me because it's the mecca for the Beatles, and I went on the Magical Mystery Tour.
Which is a sort of a bus tour where they take you by everybody's house?
Exactly, yep. We went to...
Are any of them museums, or are they still homes?
Well, John's house has a blue label on it because it's been 20... it's not just for famous musicians. For anybody, the British rule is you get a blue landmark plaque on your house if you've been dead for 20 years and are still relevant.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
it's
George
like getting
Harrison,
a license plate.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a classic.
Yeah, and so George Harrison's house does not have a blue plaque on it because he hasn't been dead for 20 years yet.
Okay.
But
they probably all will.
They probably all will eventually.
So did Ringo grow up in Liverpool as well?
Yep, they all grew up in Liverpool.
Did Pete Best grow up in Liverpool?
Yep.
Did they drive by his house?
We didn't drive by Pete's house.
This is where, remember Pete? He's not getting any royalties.
Pete still lives in his house.
Is Pete in? Does Pete still alive?
Pete is still alive.
Okay.
He, a while back, had a band called The Best of the Beatles. They were not very good.
No. Oh, that's too bad.
But he's still
a mortgage.
He's finally, when they released the anthology in the early '90s. You remember the Beatles Anthology that they came out with, where they
did it come out the same time as One?
No, way before One. Way before One.
Okay.
This was when it was Paul, George, and Ringo, and they released studio tracks, album, recording sessions, stuff like first draft, all that stuff, and they released 2 new songs from. There was demo songs from John Lennon's solo career that they got together and just finished. So there's 2 technically new Beatles songs.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It was "Free as a Bird" and "Real Love."
Were the names of them?
Were the names of them. That was released in the early '90s, and they because of that they re-released a bunch of their old stuff that Pete was a drummer on.
Okay.
From the early days of recording, so he got a lot of royalties from that. So he's doing fine now.
Oh, he's okay.
He's fine now.
His sound exchange money is working out just fine.
Exactly.
Good for him. Free as a Bird, and what was the other one called?
Real Love.
Are they pretty good?
They're all right. Real Love, I think, is a better song simply because it was a more finished song.
Okay.
Before they all got on board. Free as a Bird is it's a fine. It would probably be if it had come out with the Beatles, it probably would have been a B-side.
Okay.
It probably wouldn't have been a single
big hit.
It wouldn't have been a big hit if it had come out back in the day.
But Real Love might have. Were you ever in a band?
Yeah. I was
Did you play?
I was a drummer.
Okay.
I'm still a drummer. But in high school I was in a lot of
the marching bands.
I was in marching band. I was in drumline, and I did a lot of I was in a garage band as well, just playing talent shows and fairs and whatnot and stuff like that, and
messing around.
And I always had more of the older music sensibilities, and so I was always pushing for let's play Beatles songs, let's play Stones, let's play The Who, let's do all this stuff, because Keith Moon was the reason I got into drumming in the first place.
Isn't he the guy who drowned in his swimming pool?
Yeah, he had a lot of problems, but he was an amazing drummer.
He's a Rolling Stone guy, right?
He was The Who. The Who.
Here's what I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything. But here's the other thing is the fact that I pulled out. I remember my brother Scott talking about. He used to have the longest stories about the tragic lives of Jim Morrison, and Keith Moon, and
I was in Paris. I got to visit Jim Morrison's grave.
Did you pour one out for him?
I did not.
That's probably be weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like going to Mitch Hedberg's grave. I brought you some heroin, man.
Yeah, here's a tie off.
It seems rude.
Is it rude? I don't know. Rest in peace, Mitch.
Exactly.
I love Mitch.
Exactly. You just visit the thing.
A fellow Minnesotan.
A fellow Minnesotan.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Minnesota.
I did. Yeah, St. Paul.
Oh wow.
Yep.
I don't know why. I got Baldinger, and I got the fact that the thing is, you look entirely like a Minnesotan,
right?
It's a Wisconsin, it's a Midwestern vibe.
Midwest.
Yeah,
you know words. I can speak.
You can speak. So you were because what I'm curious about is about these two songs, right? The Free as a Bird and Real Love.
Yeah.
And did you ever write your own music? Did you guys ever try?
Yeah, we. Excuse me. I tried. So I've been playing music in one form or another since the 4th grade. Mm-hmm. Maybe even earlier. But when I was tried to, me and a friend of mine who's a year younger than me, he played the guitar, I played the drums, and we just started playing together, growing together, and playing together. And we wanted to make our own music. And my mom is a musician. She's a children's musician and stuff like that. And so I asked her for advice about how to write music, and she recommended, what are your favorite songs? Just kind of initially start to rewrite those. Yep. And then you'll eventually find your own voice. Now, in my child brain, I was like, oh, just rewrite the lyrics to songs that I like, and then that's my own song. And so
you're not rewriting the music.
No.
You only
rewrote the
lyrics. You did some filking, is what you did.
Exactly.
You did a little bit of parody.
The first song that I, quote, wrote was, so the All Things Must Pass, George Harrison, was a favorite song of mine back in the day. I know I was a very hip child.
George Harrison solo work?
Mm-hmm, okay. It was a favorite song of mine, and I rewrote it as "Nothing Lasts Forever," and I just literally rewrote the entire song of "All Things Must Pass" as "Nothing Lasts Forever," and I performed it for my mom, and she was like, No, this is not good. This is not. You shouldn't have done this. This is bad.
That's not what we're looking for.
It's just no. And so then I was like,
network for the notes.
Exactly, and it got a hard pass. Hard pass. But then after that, I realized, it should be something original.
Yes.
And so me and my friend would write together. We were mostly a cover band, but. We would write different songs and different
you gave it a shot.
Genres and stuff like that. And then when I got to my senior year of high school, the band that I was in, we wrote our class song and we performed it for graduation. Blah 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 blah.
Fun.
And so and then I write my own music currently. Just every so often, I'll have a song that play for the show or stuff, mostly comedy songs and stuff like that. If I have them, I don't have.
Well, because I was wondering about these two songs that they found, and you said that one of them was more done than the other.
Right. So, "Free as a Bird" was more of a demo.
Yeah.
It was basically John and a piano, just him, kind of playing, clunking it through and stuff like that. So there was more room for.
Other people
collaboration from
afterwards.
new lyrics that Paul and George could add in and just kind of do that sort of stuff. Whereas Real Love was a more finished. There was more tracks, more. It was more of a complete song.
It felt like they had worked on it longer. Or more
it was more like John Lennon and the Beatles with Real Love, whereas Free as a Bird was more of a collaborative feel to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and there was one other song that they had, but they decided that the song wasn't good, so they didn't finish recording. They did, it was just like, nah, we don't have to do this one.
Right, we don't have to even let anybody ever hear this.
That was more George. George was that kind of guy who was just like, yeah, this isn't a very good song. We don't have to do this. We don't have to do this one.
We're not living check to check over here.
We're fine. We're fine.
My ad. I'm about to do an ad. Rangers, this is an ad for Postmates. Thanks to Postmates for supporting the Dork Forest. Who could you ask to bring you a DiGiorno at 4 a.m. or 4 p.m.? Because anything you're craving, Postmates will deliver. They're the largest on-demand network in the United States, and they offer delivery from all the restaurants, grocery, and convenience stores and traditional retailers you could possibly ever want or need. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, Postmates will bring you what you need within the hour. No more trips to the store. So there's an app, obviously. Download the app for iOS or Android for free. Browse local restaurants and businesses, and track your delivery in real time. I just did that. I ordered, I got a DiGiorno because I thought it was funny. What do you think of that? But Postmates is your personal food delivery, grocery delivery, whatever kind of delivery service, all year round. For a limited time, Postmates is giving our listeners $100 of free delivery credit for your first 7 days. To start your free deliveries, download the app and use the code DORK. That's code DORK for $100 of free delivery credit for your first 7 days when you download the Postmates app. Get anything you need, anytime you need it. Download Postmates and save with code DORK. Let's get back into the show. So, what are your favorite sort of B-sides? Like, what are your favorite, like, are there favorite songs? Are there any, okay, 3 questions. Are there any songs you're sick of hearing? Are there any songs that you know that they've been played gajillion times, you still are psyched when they come on?
Yeah.
And what are your favorite B tracks?
Okay.
And begin.
All right. First answer overall, no, there are no songs I'm sick of hearing.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
I very much enjoy all the Beatles songs. There are some songs that I'm just like, I'm not feeling this song right now. I'll
sure.
You know, whatever you're in the mood for. But most of the songs that I get psyched about, a lot of people disregard the early Beatles years, and they were like, oh, they didn't really get to where they are until, you know, Revolver or, you know, the psychedelic Beatle stuff, and kind of disregard their earlier pop stuff. Mm-hmm. But to me, musically, the early stuff is just super fun. The bass lines are very melodious, and like it's very cool. Like one of my favorites is "All My Loving," which is just a really fun, cool song, and the bass line in that song is really great.
Yeah,
and that's a testament to Paul.
That from? Is that early stuff?
That's one of their early albums. I think it's on Meet the Beatles. It might be on A Hard Day's Night. Yeah. Oh, it's all in the 60s. The Beatles were active from 62 to 70.
Oh, okay. So 1960. I was like, I thought they were around in 72.
No.
I was concerned with Nixon, so I'm fine.
Nixon tried to get them. Elvis tried to get them deported, but
Elvis Presley tried to get the Beatles deported.
Yes, he did.
Wow. Why?
It was right after they had met him.
Oh, really?
Went over to his house, and then they were like, "Oh, I guess he was trying to get us deported because he was jealous of because they were replacing him as the
biggest thing in the world,
biggest thing." And Elvis was more of a Republican, and they were more, you know, liberal, and
yeah. Did anybody
protesty and
yeah? I wonder if Jerry Lee Lewis ever thought about deporting Elvis.
Yeah, well, he tried. Yeah,
he'd be like, you know what I'd love back, Elvis? All of my music.
All of my music, huh? How about that?
Or at least just some royalties.
Hey, why don't you learn how to play the guitar, huh?
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Jerry Lee Lewis the Elvis at the piano, and but also Jerry Lee Lewis also didn't he marry his cousin
like a 12-year-old?
Yeah, 12-year-old.
Yeah, there was trouble.
14, it was bad.
Yeah,
it was all those.
Was it a simpler time? No.
I mean, it wasn't.
Was it slightly developmentally disabled?
Was it a simpler time?
It was.
Depends what you mean by simple.
Exactly.
It was a simple time for simpletons.
Yes. So, it was full of simpletons who decided that it was okay to marry a 12-year-old.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I like the Elvis music, but I just feel that sometimes I feel like this is gonna get a lot of heat. I'm gonna get a lot of hate. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for what I'm about to say.
Just about me.
I'm gonna be like, I feel like sometimes Elvis a little overrated.
A little overrated.
You know what I mean? He was more of a crooner. He was a rock and roll crooner. He didn't write his own music.
Right.
He didn't play his own instruments.
Right.
And he was great. He got rock and roll on the map by, and self-admittedly stealing from all of Chuck Berry and all the black artists of the time. He made it whatever it is. So props where props are due, I suppose. But as far as
I don't think I've had an Elvis dork on yet. It's
I would be interested to hear their takes on it.
Right, because I mean, I've had people talk about the flawed parts of their dorkdoms. Like if you're a huge fan of Woody Allen or Michael Jackson or even Bill Cosby, whatever your jam is, and you want to talk to me about, how, separating the work from the artist and all these things. It's easier to separate the work from the artist once they are D.E.D.
Yes.
Bing Crosby used to beat the hell out of his family.
Yeah. And
turns out, hell of a nice crooner.
Beautiful voice.
I enjoy watching a Bing Crosby movie. Jeffrey Baldinger.
But speaking of the flawed parts, we want to get in. I just shat on the King.
Right.
And there's the big Beatles versus the Elvis. That's a big.
Is that another Reddit thread?
That's another Reddit thread. Yeah, absolutely. But if we really want to go back, it's like Buddy Holly was really the king of rock and roll. If you want to be honest,
is that where that thread goes?
It might be.
Does anyone talk about Jelly Roll Morton? Does anyone
Buddy
care?
Holly, Richie Valens, the Big Bopper, the big three,
Didn't they all die in a crash?
Yes, they did. Plane crash.
Here's what I know. I know about people and how they die.
Yep. But John Lennon, flawed individual. He was very much
been flawed, right?
Oh, very much so. He was a womanizer, and he was also a woman beater. And he beat his first wife, Cynthia. He also took some hands to Yoko every so often as well.
Really?
But he, not defending it, but he, in his before he died, he was very much trying to atone for all of his past sins. He retired, in 1975, he retired from the business.
Okay.
To be a stay-at-home dad to his new son, Sean.
Right.
And he reconciled with his dad a little bit. And he was being very, just trying to redeem all of his past sins and stuff like that.
Did he come from, sort of an abusive childhood kind of thing?
So his parents both abandoned him.
What?
So his dad was
let's break it down. John Lennon.
So his dad, he had to choose between his mom and dad where he wanted to stay.
Right.
And his dad was like, you have to choose between your mom and me. We're not staying together. You got to choose, which I've heard is a thing that's happens.
That's pretty common.
Yeah, that happens. And initially, he started walking with his dad, but then he saw his mom back. And
how old was he?
He was
6?
He was very young. Yeah, 6, 5, something like that. And he ran back to his mom. Mom, I don't want you to leave me.
Right.
And then his dad just kept walking, didn't even look back and stuff like that. And then
his dad was like, "Oh, thank God! I guess I can go to the pub now."
Anyway. Exactly. And then his mom decided she didn't want to be a mother, and so
she was like, "No, I never get to go to the pub."
I don't want it. She was young. She was a young mother.
Sure.
And so she dropped him off with her sister Mimi, Aunt Mimi. So that's who raised John. Very strict, and would say things to John like, the guitar is a nice hobby, John, but you'll never make a living out of it. That sort of thing. Which he, on his first gold record, he had her quote on that and gave it to her as a present. That sort of stuff. It was very nice. But
she raised him.
But Mimi raised him, and when he was around 16, 17, he started learning the ropes, his mom started coming back into his life as more of a friend than a mom.
She's like, "Oh, you're done now."
Yeah, you're basically done. She taught him,
let's hang out.
She played the ukulele. She played the banjo. That's how she taught John the guitar chords.
That must have pissed Mimi off
so
bad.
Very much so. But here's the tragedy. One day after they were hanging out, John was walking home, and this started John's hate. Well, not maybe started, but exacerbated his hatred of police. An off-duty officer drunkenly killed his mom in a car accident. Like, she was walking.
Drunk driving.
Drunk driving. Off-duty cop hit and killed John's mom, Julia.
You wouldn't think that he would hate cops. You would think he would hate drunk drivers.
He was a cop, and so the authorities like this. There's no repercussions for if you got a cop, that sort of thing. So that's stemmed in his.
Oh, and so the guy got away with it essentially. Yeah.
Essentially. And then so that was very tragic. And then he started having a band called the Quarry Men.
Yeah.
Him and a few others, and then Paul had a mutual friend with John. Mm-hmm. As in art school. John was in art school. He's an artist.
Okay.
He's an artist. Famous quote by John, "I'm an artist. You give me a tuba, I'll get you something out of it," But they met at a park show.
Okay.
And they were introduced, and John was like, this guy is good. Join the band. So then Paul joined the band.
The Quarrymen.
The Quarrymen.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Paul had a friend a few years younger called George Harrison.
Okay.
Who was an amazing guitarist, lead guitarist. Could play raunchy.
What's raunchy?
It's an old complicated guitar lick that he could play perfectly.
Okay. Fair enough.
And that was basically the audition that he did for John, and so come on in. So it was John, Paul, George, Pete Best, who had the drum set, and that's where they rehearsed, and Stu Sutcliffe, who was John's art school buddy who played the bass.
Okay.
Didn't know how to play the bass, but he was John's friend, so he was in the band.
Right. Was anybody kicked out when John joined and when George joined?
When Paul joined and George joined, no. There's 5 people.
Because previously it was just the bass guy who couldn't play, Pete, who happened to own a drum set.
Yep.
And John.
Yep, exactly.
They were the Quarrymen?
Paul and George, and there's maybe some other people, but there's like a washboard. There was a skiffle group.
Okay.
Initially.
Skiffle?
Yeah, that's what British not quite rock and roll was. It was skiffle. It was like a jug band, one of those sort of things.
Yeah.
And they were playing, Come Go With Me by the Del Vikings, and they were playing, things
covers.
Covers, Chuck Berry tunes, Little Richard, that sort of stuff. As well as British young 16-year-old British skiffle group could play black rock and roll.
Right. I mean, they have their own trials and tribulations.
Exactly.
So John wasn't. I mean, he was abandoned, but he wasn't really. What I was wondering was he beat up a lot as a kid, which made him beat people up when he got old?
It was more an emotional beating.
Right. So
that he would lash out, and he had a temper that would lash out that had not been
addressed.
Exactly. And so when he would be very cruel to his friends, like he had an acid tongue, as Paul would say. He had the sharpest wit and acid tongue. Mm-hmm. If he got mad at you, he would
just eviscerate you.
And we all know people like that, where it's just like if they're like, oh, okay, you need to go into timeout.
You didn't need to say that.
You need to go there. That's beyond the pale. That's beyond this like.
Riffing is fine, but there's no need to beat somebody up.
There's
with your
riffing,
face.
and then there's just chopping the neck off, just like see me bleed.
Yeah. So he had sort of a mean tongue, and then. And then,
for example, one of a famous quote of his later on in Once the Beatles Were the Beatles is later on, a reporter asked him, "So, is Ringo the best drummer ever?" And And John said, he's not even the best drummer in the group.
Oh, my God.
You say stuff like that.
What a shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what he said, he had said this thing about his son, Julian, from his first marriage, Cynthia. He said, how much can you care about something that's the end result of a broken prophylactic and an empty bottle of whiskey? Stuff like that, where he also wanted this illusion of the bad boy. He resented the clean-cuttedness of the Beatles,
the initial,
the pop, the boy bandish look.
Yeah.
He was envious of like how the Rolling Stones were looked at as the bad boys and stuff like that. And that was really the only true rivalry, is just because the Rolling Stones were great, but they were a country blues band. They were not innovatively, like the Beatles were innovative throughout all genres of music. They would push the envelope of all that stuff. Rolling Stones, while an amazing band, country blues, rock and roll, like that's their,
all I can do is agree with you, because I don't know anything about that.
The Rolling Stones
so
are
here's
great.
what I need: an Elvis dork, and I need a Rolling Stones dork
to come in, because the true rivals of the Beatles musically were the Beach Boys and like Motown. That crew. The problem with the Beach Boys was that they were called the Beach Boys.
Okay.
Because that's why I feel that's why they don't get as much credit as they deserve. Because when Brian Wilson released Pet Sounds,
I bought that.
Yeah, it was a revolutionary album. It was critical.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
But it was a critical flop.
Oh, really?
Because it's not beach music.
Right.
This is a Beach Boys album. This is not beach music. Whereas the Beatles,
right,
everything they release is Beatles music.
And here's the funny thing about that. Only recently did I realize that was a pun. I'm not even kidding. Like 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, oh, the Beats.
The Beats.
And you're like, oh, don't tell anyone that.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what I love about the Dork Forest is that I can just admit things. And I can be taught. I can learn things. It's
what's funny is people asked, why the Beatles were named the Beatles, and John would say, a man in a flaming pie came to me in a dream and said, you'll be Beatles with an A.
Wow. So that's probably why. What he did was he did a deflect.
Yeah, that's how he always did that. When he realized that English professors were dissecting Beatles lyrics, he made "I Am the Walrus," which is just a nonsense song.
Okay, it wasn't about LSD.
No, that's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Oh, that was
about a picture that Julian wrote for him or drew for him, called this is Lucy, this is my friend Lucy, and she's in the sky and these are diamonds and stuff like that.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people want to say, oh no, it's about LSD. It was the picture.
I think he was doing LSD.
He did LSD, but if you wanted to write a song about,
did they do a lot of drugs?
They did. They did a lot of drugs.
Like in the last couple of years they were together.
Bob Dylan introduced them to pot.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he got the Beatles high for the first time.
Wow, it's like when you find out who were roommates.
Yeah,
exactly. Of course, they all knew each other. Yeah, okay.
Yep. And the Beatles gave the Rolling Stones their first #1 hit in the UK. It was "I Want to Be Your Man."
Okay.
And John famously said, "Well, we weren't going to give them anything good, were we?" Because the other thing is the Beatles had Ringo sing that song on their album. They didn't release it as a single.
Okay.
It's just so John could be a dick, but he was also
very, very talented.
Very talented and a human of
a lot of philanthropy.
Yeah, I mean he was all about, he believed in causes. Like he was very much he was, today I believe this, tomorrow I may not believe it. He was very much similar to a Kanye type of personality, where it's just like you're kind of crazy.
Ah, okay.
Kind of loopy, but it's very much, I believe this. If I say the exact opposite thing tomorrow,
right,
it's not going to be hypocritical because I'm telling you the truth as I know it right now. That was kind of what John was.
Wow.
And so it could be very frustrating. I'm not trying to say that as a positive thing, but that's just what his personality was.
Right, and it's and the thing is it gives you a glimpse into Kanye a little bit.
Right, exactly.
Right,
and that type of narcissistic personality, because he was and again, this isn't a defense of his bad actions, but at 21, John Lennon was a god amongst men.
Right.
He was the most, like, the only people who
Absolute
can relate
power.
to him is Paul, George, and Ringo. You know, it's like that. They were before the internet, they were viral, you know, how much fame they had without the internet.
Is Paul also a flawed person?
He has his flaws, but he was way more stable. He's a much stable...
He just doesn't seem to have...
He's not, like, his dad was loving.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he lost his mom early. Yeah. And that's him and John bonded over the fact that they both were orphans, but his dad was... loving dad. He was a musician. He was a jazz musician and stuff like that. So and Paul was the most musically talented of the Beatles. Like, he could play the most. That's why
I have all the hits. I have the Wings. All the hits and then the B-sides. I have that album. Yeah, which is a 4 album. Like, love it. It's a giant Wings thing. So
you know make everybody sad.
What?
The Beatles, all of them, including Ringo, were not quite 30 by the time they broke up.
Okay.
And Paul was done with Wings by the time he was 34.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, like, literally, we're all, like, their genius moments were done by the time they were 34.
Yep.
And how old was John when he got shot? When he
40.
was killed? He was 40.
He was 40 years old. In he was killed December 7th, 1980.
December 7th, like Pearl Harbor Day?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Or no. Sorry. December 8th. December 8th, 1980.
I was going to say, that would have come up. I would have even known that.
Well, because here's the thing. Because I do this joke about it where I go, you know, he was killed on December 8th, 1980. And, you know, people do a lot of tweets about it. It's like hashtag remember, hashtag imagine, hashtag, you know, should have been Yoko, hashtag, you know, like, you know, a lot of sweet stuff. The day before, December 7th.
Yeah. Also hashtag remember.
Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
No tweets.
There are plenty of tweets.
I didn't see any tweets.
I have never seen John Lennon tweets. I've seen plenty of...
Maybe it's...
you know what? Who you're following? You're following a lot of Beatles fans. I'm following a lot of history nerds.
Yeah, exactly. Because it made me realize that we can only never forget one thing at a time.
That's funny. Have you ever seen the Dick Cavett where he interviews Yoko and John?
Yeah. Yep.
Because that is one of the only interviews with him I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he had this great line. He said, you know, people blame Yoko for breaking up the Beatles.
Yeah.
And if so, does she get credit for all of
the solo
Paul's
work as well? And that's the thing. It's Yoko is not to blame for the Beatles breaking up, but it is a catalyst because she was the first person that was allowed in the studio. Like, John was so in love with her that he started breaking away from the Beatles.
He went to Girlfriend Planet.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, hindsight, and Paul has said this in interviews and stuff like that, hindsight, it's like he was in love. That's just what it was.
Right, that's what people do.
He was in love.
Right.
But the thing about Yoko, I'm not one of these, like...
There are people who hate Yoko.
Oh, yeah. And
talk about a Reddit thread. I've even heard that.
There is a lot of misplaced hate on her.
Right.
But I do feel that she isn't as innocent as some of her defenders would have you say. She did approach Paul first.
She was a bit of a groupie?
Yeah, she approached Paul, and he wasn't interested, and then she started going after John.
She hit on Paul first?
Yeah.
Oh, essentially you're just like, I want to dance with her. She doesn't want to dance with me. I guess I'll dance with her.
Yeah.
And then you end up being married and having 3 kids.
Exactly. And and it's one of these things where it's like the big misconception early on was that John was infatuated with was the fact that she had no idea who the Beatles were.
Okay.
That was a big thing for John because it's like, I'm not my fame, you know, I'm not, you know,
right,
he started resenting the Beatles, like being associated with the Beatles, you know, all that stuff. And it's like, and so when he went to this art gallery, he saw the sign on the top of the ladder that said yes, and it was positive, and so, oh, who's this lady? And it's Yoko. And so
unpack that story. What the hell? He went to an art gallery and saw a sign that said yes.
So Yoko is an avant-garde artist. One of these people who puts on
multimedia.
Exactly. So one of her.
When did they meet? 68?
67, something like that.
Okay.
67, 68, something like that. They were both married still. They were both going through this. Okay. So there's some bootleg tracks that I have where John sings a parody of no more, where he's talking about Yoko's divorce finally going through, and it's like, the lawyer said to me, it's okay. So he went to one of her art gallery showings, and there was steps up to a ladder and there was like a magnifying glass with a little postcard on the ceiling or something like that he would climb up, and he looks at it, and it said yes.
Okay.
And so the story that he would tell,
very evocative.
And again, like these are all the stories that he would tell in interviews, which he would love to fuck with interviewers. So the truth is somewhere in the middle of all these stories. You know what I mean? Obviously, I wasn't there. Nobody was there. Only they know what was true. But that was a positive thing. He's like, if it had said no, or if it had said something snarky or something whatever, I would have dismissed it. But it just said yes, and that was a very positive thing. Okay. So I wanted to meet the artist who did this, and it was Yoko, and they just kind of fell in love right there, according to John. Yep. The other thing that I have a problem with on Yoko is more how she treated Julian. Right.
She's dismissive.
Very dismissive, and she made him buy back his inheritance via auction, like stuff that John,
like John's stuff.
Yeah, like
that
John.
He was like, I would like some stuff of my dad's.
Yeah, and
instead of just giving it to her when John passed.
Yeah, he had to buy them back at auction.
Oh my God!
And so stuff like that is like, you are not as innocent as you make it out to be. You are manipulative.
But neither was John.
No, of course not.
So everybody's flawed.
I'm not diminishing Yoko and defending John. I'm saying that
people who defend Yoko, who've canonized her, or say that the only reason to hate her is if you're racist or whatever, which a lot of people are. Sure. Oh, there's plenty of racism.
100%. But if, like, the facts of what she did...
She might also be a raging jackass.
Right, exactly. Right. And it's one of those things where it's the problem with a lot of avant-garde just people where it's just like, yeah, what if the trees were windows? Stuff like that where it's like...
You blew my mind.
Yeah,
I want to see that.
Like, what if
Jeffrey
trees
Baldinger,
were windows and the bark was your soul that you had to see through in order to
peel it back.
Exactly.
Like a shutter.
And
then you can see into the next dimension, the fourth dimension.
And that's when you realize your age is just a ring around yourself,
We just blew our minds, you guys.
We just blew our minds and wrote 50 Yoko Ono tweets. If you go on her Twitter, those are the types of tweets that she writes.
Oh, really? That's too bad. It's now.
But then also, like, when John's playing with his hero Chuck Berry.
Okay.
They're playing Johnny Be Good together. There's a video, and Yoko's just screaming into the microphone, and it's just like...
Over it. Oh, yeah.
Come on.
I bought Imagine, I think.
Yeah.
And...
Now, the other thing, though, to your point...
Yeah.
She inspired John to make some great music.
Oh, right.
She inspired him to write Imagine. She inspired him to write Jealous Guy. He inspired him to write... most of his solo stuff is inspired by Yoko. So you got to give credit where credit's due.
Right. Here's my next question. Was Paul always married to one person? The woman without the leg?
No. So that was his third marriage.
Oh, okay. Oh, by the way,
Paul's
Rangers, I don't go to anyone's third wedding. Go ahead. So I told my dad. Actually, my sister.
Hey, that's fine. I just started going to my second weddings, so I'm getting up there.
Exactly. It's too.
So Paul was married to Linda. Paul's
initially
Yoko was Linda, and people hated Linda like they hated Yoko because most people
Paul
hated their
from
spouses. No.
Okay.
He got married.
His first marriage was Linda.
His first marriage was Linda. Paul and John had this big rivalry, especially post Beatle breakup, because there was a big legal thing about rights and everything like that. And so their first solo albums were kind of shots at each other. Like Paul wrote a song called Too Many People, and there was a bunch of lyrics in there that were shots at John being, doing the bed in for peace and just like not doing anything and just stuff like that. And, kind of messing with John on that front. And then John wrote a song called How Do You Sleep, which started like, was So Sgt. Pepper Took You by Surprise. Seen right through your mama's eyes. The only thing you done was yesterday. And since you've gone, you're just another day. Like stuff like that. And you live with straights who tell you was king.
Wow. So you know more John lyrics than Paul lyrics.
Well, John's was way more vicious. And this is what I was saying earlier.
More vicious. Yeah.
John was way more vicious.
Yeah.
When he felt slighted.
Yeah.
And his defense on it afterwards, once they reconciled, was like, the song's really about me. It's like, John, no, it wasn't.
No.
It was completely about Paul.
What a banana head.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah. So he's married to Linda. Where did Linda come from?
So Linda, they met during the Beatles. He had dated this girl, Jane Astor, who was their photographer.
Okay.
And then in Germany, I believe they met in Germany. That's where Jane met Paul, and they started taking pictures and stuff like that. And then Linda Eastman, they met back in Liverpool, and in London, and they started dating, and they just like fell in love. And it wasn't a big to do, but it was taking a single Beatle off the market, which is a reason a lot of people hated Linda. And then once the breakup happened, John had Yoko on stage with him all the time, and so Paul put Linda in Wings, and people hated that.
Right.
And Linda hated that. She wasn't a musician. She didn't like being on stage.
Right.
But
she had a dream, and it involved, I don't know,
but
horticulture.
Linda, exactly. And but Linda loved Paul, and they loved each other, and they wanted to be together all the time. Linda's also the reason that Paul became a vegetarian. She was a vegetarian. They started doing animal rights stuff together and stuff like that. And a lot of the hate, and Linda had a lot of hate too, but she didn't have the racist hate.
Right.
So it was
just sort of normal white lady hate.
It was normal white lady hate.
Yeah.
So like Yoko had hate and racist hate.
Right.
Linda just had the hate.
Right.
So it was not, people were like, oh, Linda's better than Yoko. It's like, well, okay, it's the same thing.
Why would she be better?
Why do you think that? Why do you think that, huh?
It's like nice white boy marrying a nice white girl? Is that what it possibly is?
Is that what you're thinking?
I don't like you at all.
Yeah.
So.
And then the funniest / saddest marriage of the Beatles is George Harrison to Pattie Boyd, who the song Something was about.
Okay.
The Something in the Way She Moves, which is considered
that's a pretty song.
Considered one of the greatest love songs of all time.
Okay. I'm going to listen to that when this is over.
Yeah. Frank Sinatra once said, it's the greatest Lennon-McCartney number there is, written by George Harrison. But
oh my God, that's funny.
But that song was written about Pattie Boyd.
Right.
Pattie Boyd left George for Eric Clapton, who was best friends with George Harrison.
Because they were George Harrison plays the guitar.
George Harrison plays the guitar.
Clapton
Eric Clapton plays the guitar.
Okay.
They were best friends. They loved each other very dearly. Layla was about Pattie Boyd.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Pattie Boyd left George and married Clapton.
Yeah.
And then broke his heart too. And so they finally reconciled and considered themselves husbands-in-law.
Oh, okay.
Aww, yeah, it was very sweet. They remained friends and stuff like that. And then George eventually met Olivia, who is his current widow, and had Danny Harrison, their son, who looks identical to George. Which
really?
It's
just
eerie. It's eerie how much they look.
Genetics.
Yeah, exactly.
Wacky.
It's kind of like Julian Lennon looks very, very similar to John. And,
he really does.
And Paul's son James looks like Paul, and blah blah blah.
So, what I was going to tell you was that I have a friend of mine who went out with both Elvis Costello and Billy Bragg,
really?
And supposedly they both wrote songs about her.
Wow, that's always fascinating.
That is fascinating, and she is one of the most beautiful. she's probably my age now,
Yeah.
and she's always been a very beautiful woman. She's a very good musician, Leslie Ball in Minneapolis. She does the Balls Theater show on Saturday nights.
Oh, that's awesome.
And and she's always been enormously beautiful, but she's still, you know how like some people grow old and you're like, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
And it was almost like Diane Keaton.
Yeah.
Like, you know, where you're like, but Leslie, it's not like Leslie has a stylist. It's not like someone's going, oh, Miss Ball, let me just affect your. No, she walks out into the world and it's flowing grace.
Yeah.
And you're like, I would write a song about her if I were a song person.
I see that.
As it is, I've written no jokes about her. She seems
fair.
like a nice lady.
It's writing a song about somebody and writing a joke about them. Two different reactions from the person, I feel like.
Very different. Very different.
Sometimes I'll go to people like, hey, I wrote a joke about you. They're like, that's all right. Let me hear it first. It's like
grain of salt.
Mm-hmm. If I was like, I wrote a song about you. Thank you. Oh my God.
Turns out it's a hate song.
Yeah.
That'd be weird. What about Ringo?
Ringo, solid marriage to I believe it was a playmate.
Oh, really? Ringo was like, I won the lottery, and she seems very nice.
I think I believe he has kids, and his son Zach. He has a few kids. Zach Starkey is the drummer for The Who, replaced Keith Moon.
Oh wow!
They're on tour with him now.
Wow. The Who is still touring?
The Who is still touring. Teenage Wasteland. More like middle-aged teenage...
the joke is gone.
Middle-aged expanding waistband.
There you go.
No, it's a stupid joke. And I screwed it up.
I like that you insisted on doing it.
I had to get it out. No, I saw The Who... right before John Entwistle died, which was which was their original bass player. They were on tour as Pete Townsend, Roger Daltrey, John Entwistle, and Zach Starkey, which I thought was a very cool
Is his
show
name
to
Zach
see.
Starkey Starr?
No, because Ringo Starr is
Not a real name.
Is Richard Starkey.
Oh, okay.
They called him Ringo because he wore a lot of rings.
Oh, okay.
And Starr was just a good stage name.
And it's because his last name is
Starkey.
Starkey, so
Yeah.
Starr is
It's just short for Starkey.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
It's all good.
And
Okay.
What's his face?
You had a story, but
I had a story, but I lost the name. So I'm like,
okay. Did Ringo write any of the songs?
He wrote Octopus's Garden.
Oh, I don't mind that song.
I like the song, and when I say he wrote it, I mean he wrote the concept of it and wrote the "I'd like to be under the sea."
Okay.
Da, 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 and then and then George helped him with the actual song.
Okay.
So it's a lot of Ringo songs are actually George and Ringo songs.
Okay.
Because Ringo just didn't have the skills, and this is a big reason why he doesn't get enough credit, because he wasn't a songwriter.
Yeah.
He was just a drummer.
Yeah.
And when I say just a drummer, I'm just like, he was a great drummer.
Yeah.
But comparatively to George, Paul, and John, who are all multi-talented musicians and songwriters.
Yeah, kind of all geniuses in their own right, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get kind of like, oh, and Ringo, you know.
Right, but you're like, but without his
him, he was, before he joined, as he famously says, the Beatles were nothing without him. They didn't get famous till he joined,
Right, so he must have done something right.
They were playing together as the Quarry Men, the Silver Beatles.
Okay.
And then the Beatles from 1957 till 1962. And then, Stu Sutcliffe, John's art school friend, was the original bass player.
Yeah.
I mentioned him earlier. He fell in love with Jane Astor.
Okay.
They got married, stayed in Hamburg, and then he died of a brain tumor.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
That's did he? Well, I mean, the thing is all of these people are like 100 years old.
Right? Yeah. This is not. I'm not breaking news.
Right.
But
Exactly. And then some of them, these are not careers cut tragically short.
No.
And so John stops playing. Does he stop playing entirely in 75?
He becomes a stay-at-home dad. He stopped playing. He's living on a
Scrooge McDuck pile of money on the Upper West Side or East Side or wherever
he's living in.
Did you ever go see where his apartment was?
Didn't see the he had. I mean, he had a mansion house like that house.
Like a building.
They had a he had a house in the fields of some London town. Not sure that when he in 75 to 80 he was in London. He moved to New York into the Dakota. That's where he was staying. That's where he was shot and killed in 1980.
Is that?
The Dakota is right near Central Park.
Okay, Central Park West or East?
West.
Okay.
Not sure. I visited
by Columbus Circle or by the other side. It's you know what? That's
not sure.
That's 52nd. Anyway, so
not
it's
sure.
all right there.
It's all right there. There's a tribute to John. There's a logo.
I've seen
that. Imagine that's so right near that is where the Dakota is.
Okay.
And I recently went there with a friend who I had never done like an official tour of Central Park, and my friend was like, let's go, let's take this tour. I'll take you around. I'll show you. I know you love the Beatles. Here's the Imagine thing. And then he's like that, and that's the Dakota. And I was like, oh, that's the Dakota where John was shot. And I was like, this is where he shot. Take my picture. And he was like, all right, I'll take your picture. And then I lied down in the position that John was found in.
Wow.
And people were staring at us because it was very uncouth.
It wasn't the tribute.
It wasn't the tribute that he thought that I was going to do. I took a picture with the Imagine symbol, which is very sweet, very nice. And then I had that one where the dead one, and I showed it to my brother. I was like, here, look at this. And then I flipped it, and it shows me on. And he's like, I'm surprised that you didn't piss on the flowers around the Imagine symbol based on this picture.
Right. I know that when John Lennon was. I know that when Elvis died and when John Lennon was killed, my stepmother was devastated.
Yeah,
these were big icons and
huge.
And were she still alive, she would frown upon this sort of disrespect.
Oh yes, most definitely.
But it wasn't like you were around in 75.
No.
So as far as you're concerned, he's always been dead.
He's always been dead. In my lifetime, he's always been dead. Elvis has always been dead. That's right. Such a very important point to make about people looking at history. It's like these have always been dead.
Right. The thing is that when you look at Guy Fawkes Day. Yeah. People who were there when Guy Fawkes was killed, they are not psyched about Guy Fawkes Day.
No.
He's been dead our whole lives.
All of our lives.
We're going to dress up a dude and stick him in a push cart and then ask for pennies.
Yeah.
And
that's what we're going to do, and we're going to be happy about it, okay?
And then we're going to come out with some cash and prizes and some candy.
And All Hallows Eve,
Yeah.
Which St. Valentine's wasn't there a massacre on Valentine's Day?
Right.
Isn't that the celebration?
I don't think that is the history of Valentine's Day.
I feel like there's a St. Valentine's Day massacre or something like that in the history.
But that's not why. I think Valentine's Day was there before.
It's bloody and it's red, and they adapted it.
This is an interesting rationalization, but I'm almost certain you are entirely incorrect. So is Paul
may be wrong, but
writing?
I don't know if I'm right.
Is Paul still writing?
He is, yeah.
Is George still writing?
George is dead.
Shit. Ringo doesn't write, so he's fine.
But Ringo does
he plays.
Ringo does write, but he has collaborators.
Okay.
He has his all-star band that he does it with Joe Walsh, who of the Eagles.
Yeah.
And a bunch of it's like a super group that he has that he tours around.
Fun.
The funny thing about Ringo is he had the first #1 hit album post Beatles breakup.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. His self-titled Ringo.
Bam.
Yeah, exactly. But the funny thing about that album is it has, if you want to think about it in this way, it could be the last Beatles album because each song, like the first 4 songs, first song is him and John collaboration. The second song is a him and Paul collaboration. The third song is a him and George collaboration. Like it's
so Ringo got along with everybody.
Oh yeah, Ringo was the peacemaker.
What was the name of his solo album?
Ringo.
Oh, it was just called Ringo.
Called Ringo.
Okay.
And the song that he wrote with
I kind of want to listen to that album.
You can very much tell the collaboration.
Yeah.
Because the collaboration with John sounds like a John song.
Yeah.
It's called I'm the Greatest. And I do have demos of John playing I'm the Greatest, but he gave it to Ringo because it's like it'd be way too narcissistic of me to have this, even though I believe it. You know?
Of course, even though it's like, clearly the truth.
Yeah, when I was a little boy, way back home in Liverpool, my mama told me I was great. Dun 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 dun. You know, it's like this whole song of just like.
I want Kanye to cover that.
Well, that's the thing. Paul, got together with Kanye recently, and it's like it makes sense. It's like that type of personality.
He's drawn to him.
I did a tweet where I was like, it was going great until Paul said the Beatles were bigger than Yeezus.
Oh, Yeezus, boom. Come on.
We're doing jokes
Baldinger.
Here. Yeah.
Okay, so we are at an hour.
We are.
Yeah, we are. It has
flown by.
It really has.
It's flown by. We haven't even gotten to the time that the Beatles stopped touring and invented music videos.
You guys, did you know that the Beatles invented music videos? Probably.
They did. 1966, they stopped touring because they couldn't hear themselves. Like the crowds were too wild. They couldn't hear themselves, and they just wanted to get into the studio. And people kept on trying to get them out, and they were just like, let's just send them a video of us and our songs and stuff like that. It's like kind of the invention of music television, MTV.
Was it Michael Nesmith invented MTV, though, didn't he?
Like
the guy from the Monkees?
The Monkees, yeah. I mean, they were a huge influence on the Beatles, is the old joke.
The Monkees?
Is the Monkees, is the old joke.
I remember loving the Monkees as a kid.
Monkees were great. Neil Diamond wrote all their music.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's great. And once they started writing their own music, they started not being as good. But
that'll happen.
Yeah, but they were they were an American television show, the Monkees, and they were kind of the answer to the Beatles,
right?
From we have our group, but they had their lead singer be Davy Jones, who was British as well.
Yes, yes, and tiny.
Yeah,
and here's the thing: this could go on for days. But you've been great.
Starting into the '66 thing, they stopped touring, and so they didn't play the O2 Arena, and Paul McCartney recommended Jimi Hendrix, and that's how he got his first big break.
Wow.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm literally turning this off. Right. It's been great, Jeffrey.
It's been great.
Everybody, it's Jeffrey Baldinger, and follow him at Jeff Baldinger. What?
Baldinger.
No, I know. I did it on purpose because it's Jeff. Yep. Anyway, so it's Jeff with a J. JeffBaldinger. And that's Instagram and Twitter. Mm-hmm. And then it's jeffreybaldinger.net.
Yep. JEFFREY.
REY. Thank you so much for doing the show.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. I love this. Yeah.
And Rangers, you know the rules out there. Take care of each other.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat. My hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?